I never thought our marriage would come to this, and I'm thrilled to see where it's going. For years, I believed we had something special, a bond that few people manage to sustain over time. But that night, as we sat at the dinner table, my wife, Emily, set her fork down, took a deep breath, and said something that took me by surprise. Michael, I don't know how to say this, but I don't think I want to be intimate with you anymore. I was taken aback, but I remained calm. At first, I thought she was joking, but her tone was serious, almost cold. I tried to laugh it off to ease the tension, but her expression didn't waver, as if she had rehearsed that line 100 times. "What do you mean, Emily? What are you saying?" I asked, trying to process her words. She crossed her arms and looked away, her expression inscrutable. "It's nothing personal. I just don't feel like it anymore. I'm tired, you know? The routine, work, all of it. It's not about you. It's about me." At that moment, a mixture of confusion and rejection washed over me. What did she mean? It's not about me. We were married. We'd been together for years. How could she decide something so important without even discussing it with me first? I took a deep breath and tried to keep calm. "Okay, I understand that maybe you're tired or stressed, but this is something we can work through together, don't you think? Maybe we could take a break, go on a trip, do something different. We just need to talk about it." But she shook her head almost dismissively. "Michael, I know we can't fix this with a trip. I really don't want this anymore. I think you need to respect how I feel." That sentence hit me again. Respecting how she felt. But what about how I felt? My wife, the woman I had shared my life with, was essentially telling me there was no longer any room for me in a vital part of our relationship. I didn't want to turn it into a fight, so I decided to approach it calmly. "Emily, I'd love to understand what's going on. Was there something I could do to help? Have I stopped doing something you need? I'm ready to work through this together." She sighed again, this time with impatience. "Michael, I already told you, it's not about you. I've just changed. People change. You know? I don't see why this has to be such a big issue." The calm I was trying to maintain began to slip away. "Not a big issue? Emily, we're married. This is what makes us a couple. How do you expect me to accept this without at least trying to understand the real reason?" "I already gave you the reason," she shot back, her voice taking on a new, determined tone. "I just don't feel like it anymore. It's that simple. If you can't accept that, then that's your problem." I stood up from the table, my heart racing and my stomach churning. I didn't want to yell, didn't want to lose my temper, but the way she talked, as if this didn't matter, made me feel invisible, as if my feelings didn't carry any weight. I made my way to the bedroom, needing to collect myself. I reminded myself of my belief that marital problems should be addressed through dialogue and understanding, reinforcing my resolve not to give up. Maybe she was going through something she couldn't express, something that was making her so distant. Over the next few days, I did everything I could to reconnect with Emily. I surprised her with special dinners, flowers, and even planned a weekend getaway at a spa she'd always mention wanting to visit. But despite all these efforts, I couldn't seem to get through to her. She thanked me with a smile, but it wasn't the genuine kind. She went back to her phone, or her shows alone on the couch. I started noticing other things. Emily, who had once been affectionate and attentive, now seemed like she was in another world. She was spending more time on her phone, and her answers to my questions were short and almost dismissive. She always managed to steer the conversation away, as if everything else mattered more than I did. One night, I decided to bring up the issue again. Emily, I know you said it's not about me, but something's changed between us. I want to understand what's happening. She rolled her eyes. Michael, please. We've already discussed this. I just need space. Space? Space for me? I asked, my voice tinged with a mix of disbelief and urgency. It's not like that, she said, sounding tired. I just want things to feel lighter. Why do you have to keep bringing this up? Because I care about you, Emily. I care about us. I can't ignore the fact that you're pulling away, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't respond. Instead, she picked up her phone and started scrolling again, effectively ending the conversation. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a gaping emptiness. What could I do? I wasn't asking for something unreasonable. All I wanted was for us to get back to being partners and companions. But it felt like, to her, none of that mattered anymore. As the days went by, I couldn't shake the sense that Emily had checked out of our marriage. I started reflecting on everything that had been happening, even things I had overlooked for years. Emily had relied on me financially from the beginning of our marriage. I wanted to be a supportive husband, someone she could count on, so I took on most of the financial responsibilities. She'd talk about needing to focus on her personal growth, but looking back, I realized that growth never actually happened. I started questioning whether our relationship was as deep and genuine as I had believed it to be, or if the balance of our partnership had become skewed. That thought nagged at me, but I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to accept that the woman I loved might be using me. Despite her growing indifference, I kept trying, kept hoping for the best. I thought that if I gave her more time, she'd change her mind and realize how much I cared. Yet with each passing day, she seemed more distant and indifferent. It was then that I made a decision. If Emily wanted to be just a provider, I was ready to be more than that. I decided that if she wasn't willing to share her feelings with me, I wouldn't carry the weight of our marriage on my own. After exhausting all the conventional efforts and facing her continued disinterest, I realized that our situation called for a different approach. If the problem was indeed monotony or routine, maybe I could break the cycle and bring something new to our relationship. I'd always heard that keeping the spark alive was important in long-term marriages, so I thought that might be what was missing. I dove into a treasure trove of ideas, ready to infuse our relationship with a fresh, exciting spark. I admit, I'm not usually the bold type, but I was determined to do whatever it took to win Emily's attention back. The following week, I went to a specialty store for couples. It was intimate, and I felt a rush of excitement as I walked in. The store clerk was friendly and helpful, guiding me to select a few popular items for couples looking to spice up their love lives. I bought a few toys, some provocative lingerie, massage oils, and even a game that promised to spark intimacy in a fun way. When I got home, I hid the bags to make it a surprise. I carefully prepared everything, lit candles, put on soft music, and decorated the bedroom with rose petals, something I knew she had always found romantic. When Emily came home from work, I invited her to dinner, which I had cooked myself. It was a simple but thoughtful dish, made with care. She seemed surprised by the effort. "Wow, Michael, what's going on?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity. "Are you trying to win me over with dinner?" she joked, her smile reaching her eyes. "No, I just wanted us to have a special night. You deserve it. We deserve it." She accepted the dinner, but she seemed distracted, checking her phone between bites. But I wasn't about to let that stop me. When we finished, I invited her upstairs. "I have a surprise for you," I said, taking her hand. "A surprise?" She raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. When we entered the bedroom, she looked around and saw the setup. For the first time in weeks, I saw a spark of interest in her eye, but it quickly faded. "This is lovely, Michael, but I've already told you I'm not in the mood for this." "Emily, it's not a race. I just want us to reconnect. How about we start with a massage? No pressure, just relaxation." She sighed, but agreed. I eagerly grabbed the massage oil and started massaging her shoulders. At first, she seemed to relax, but after a few minutes, she began glancing at her watch and picking up her phone, as if she was impatient. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. "Yeah, it's just, I have to wake up early tomorrow. I don't think I'll be able to fully relax knowing that." It felt like no matter what I did, she always found an excuse. That night, once again, she turned her back to me in bed and fell asleep. I lay awake for hours, thinking about how I could improve. In the days that followed, I tried changing my approach. I started taking better care of myself, buying new clothes, dressing more sharply, and going to the gym more often. It wasn't just to impress Emily. It was also to rebuild my own confidence. When she noticed, she commented, "You're taking care of yourself more these days. Is there a special reason?" "Yes, I'm doing this for myself, but also to show you what a great man I am," I replied, grinning. She just gave a casual shrug. "You already look fine the way you are. You don't need all of this." Her response disheartened me, but I kept trying. I suggested we do something together, like dancing or watching a bold movie to set the mood. But again, she turned me down, citing excuses like, "I'm too tired," or "I'm not in the right headspace for that right now." One night, I decided to use one of the games I had bought. It was simple, with questions and challenges meant to bring couples closer together. I tried to make it fun, but her reaction was a bit disappointing. "Michael, please. This is so silly. We don't need this." "It's not about needing it, Emily. It's about having a good time and reconnecting." She took a deep breath and stood up. "Look, I know you're trying and I appreciate it, but I've already told you I'm not in that place. You're pushing for something that's just not going to happen." Her words hit me hard, but I took a deep breath and let them sink in. Something that's not going to happen? Is that it? You've already decided there's no room for intimacy in our marriage anymore? Michael, I don't know what else to say. I think you're expecting something from me that I just can't give right now. But why, Emily? Why can't you? If something's bothering you or pushing you away, I'm all ears. She shook her head and left the room, leaving me alone with the toys and games I had bought. I felt humiliated and frustrated. Why was I being treated like this? It wasn't as if I was asking for something unreasonable. I just wanted our marriage to work, to be happy again. But at that moment, I began to realize that maybe the problem wasn't me. It became clear that the issue was much deeper than I had anticipated. After that night, when Emily left me alone with all my failed attempts, something inside me started to change. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without feeling a mix of humiliation and frustration. It was as if every effort I made to save our marriage pushed her further away, making me feel like I was the only one who still cared. In the days that followed, I kept to myself, observing her closely. I stopped trying to please her, stopped planning surprises, and gave up on seeking any connection. I stayed quiet, reflecting on everything that was happening. What once seemed like love now felt like a facade. It felt like I was living with a stranger who no longer saw me for who I was, but only for what I could provide. That's when I noticed a pattern I had ignored for far too long. Whenever Emily needed something, whether it was money, help with a problem, or an expensive gift, she knew exactly how to act sweet and caring. But as soon as she got what she wanted, she would revert to being cold and distant, treating me like I was nothing more than a functional piece in her life. I remembered all the times she'd said, "You're such a generous man, Michael. I don't know what I'd do without you." Those words, which once filled me with pride, now felt like a game to her. It wasn't genuine gratitude. It was a way to keep me tied to the idea that she needed me. But deep down, I wondered, did she love me, or was I just the provider of her comfortable lifestyle? With these thoughts swirling in my mind, I decided it was time to put an end to it. I couldn't keep humiliating myself to save something that, by all rights, should come naturally in a marriage. I had to end the relationship where I was being treated like an ATM. It was time to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. That evening, I waited for Emily to get home and sat in the living room. I called her over for a talk. When she came downstairs and saw me sitting there with a serious expression, she looked suspicious. "What do you want to talk about, Michael? We've gone over this so many times," she said, crossing her arms. "Exactly, Emily. We've talked about this over and over again and gotten nowhere. But today, I'm ready to talk about this in a new way. Let's be direct." She rolled her eyes and sat down on the opposite couch, as if she were bracing herself for something she didn't want to hear. "Look, I've spent the past few weeks trying everything to salvage what we had, to understand what's going on between us. And you know what I've realized? I've been trying alone. You just don't care anymore." "Michael, that's not true. I care, Michael. It's just that our ideas of what caring mean might be a little different." "Oh, really? Tell me about it, Emily. Tell me how you care, because from where I'm standing, it seems like you're only here because it's convenient, because I handle everything, pay the bills, keep this house running, and provide the lifestyle you enjoy. But when it comes to being a partner, you've completely shut me out." Her eyes widened, clearly caught off guard by my firm tone. "You're exaggerating, Michael. Just because I'm not looking to be intimate right now doesn't mean I don't care about you. This is way more complicated than you think." "Is it?" "I'm all ears. I'm eager to understand, because all you've done is shut down and treat me like I'm a stranger in your life." She paused for a moment, as if considering her words, and then she looked at me. "I've told you, Michael. I've changed. Things aren't the same anymore. Yes, you've changed. And today, I've realized that I'm tired, Emily. I'm tired of being treated like I exist only to support you. So, I'll be straight with you. From now on, things are going to change." She furrowed her brow, confused. "What do you mean, change?" "It's simple. I'm not going to support you financially anymore. I'm not going to fund your whims, shopping sprees, or expenses. If you're not ready to fully commit to being my wife in every sense of the word, then I'll have to find a different financial path. From now on, it's every person for themselves." "You're joking, right?" she asked, her voice teasing. "You know I can't afford to cover everything on my own." "No, Emily, I'm not joking. You're more than capable of taking care of yourself. You always have. But as long as I was doing everything for you, it was easier to let me carry all the weight. This is ridiculous, Michael. You're punishing me because I don't want to have sex with you. What kind of man does that?" "No, Emily, this isn't about punishment. It's a reaction. I've invested years in this marriage, believing we had something special. But now I see that, to you, I'm just a source of money and comfort. I'm not going to settle for that anymore." She stared at me in silence, a mix of anger and disbelief in her eyes. "And what do you expect me to do? Quit everything and go work some random job? Humiliate myself? I expect you to take responsibility for your life, Emily. That's all. I've taken responsibility for mine for years, and it's the best thing I can do. Now it's your turn. If you don't see me as a partner anymore, then I'm going to stop sacrificing myself for someone who doesn't value me." She jumped up, her hands flying up in the air. "You're unbelievable, Michael. After everything we've been through, you're treating me like this? Like I'm disposable? No, Emily. I'm just treating you the same way you've been treating me for months now. It's your choice, Emily. Either you decide to truly be in this marriage and act like my partner, or we go our separate ways. But one thing I know for sure is that I'm done putting myself through hell for someone who doesn't appreciate me." She didn't respond. She just stormed out of the room, slamming the bedroom door behind her. I stayed there for a while, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. I felt a sense of relief for finally expressing my true feelings, and at the same time, I felt a twinge of sadness knowing that this conversation might be the end of our marriage. For the first time in a long time, I felt free, free of guilt, free of a need to please someone who didn't care about me anymore. That was the moment I decided it was time to start putting myself first. After that conversation, things between Emily and me were never the same. While I didn't expect a radical transformation, I held on to a tiny flame of hope that our conversation might ignite a spark of determination in her to fight for our marriage. Maybe. But what happened instead was the opposite. Instead, our already strained relationship grew even colder. In the days that followed, Emily barely spoke to me. She spent most of her time locked in the bedroom or glued to her phone, as if my presence was nothing more than an annoyance. Meanwhile, I started to take a break from it all. There was no longer any reason to keep trying. For the first time in years, I realized I wasn't hurting anymore. What used to be a source of distress and discomfort now felt like a confirmation of what I had already known. Our marriage had ended long before that conversation. I stopped caring about her reactions. I stopped asking about her day, stopped trying to please her, and no longer sought any form of connection. It wasn't out of resentment or vengeance. It was simply a natural detachment. I had spent all my energy trying to save something that clearly only mattered to me. The household expenses, which I had shouldered alone for years, were now shared. Emily was a bit surprised by this change, but I explained that I wanted to be a more equal partner. Initially, she expressed her discontent, stating that I was being insensitive and unfair. But when she realized I wasn't backing down, she began making excuses to leave the house more often. She mentioned spending time with her parents, but I knew she was planning her exit. A month after that decisive conversation, Emily called me into the living room and, in a cold tone, announced, "I think it's better if we separate." I simply nodded. There was nothing left to discuss. "Okay, when do you plan on leaving?" I asked calmly. She seemed surprised by my response. Maybe she was expecting me to plead with her to stay or attempt to convince her otherwise. But at that moment, I had already made peace with the idea that our marriage was over. "I'll go to my parents' house this weekend. I've already packed some things," she said, her tone distant. "All right. If you need help with the bags, just let me know," I replied, maintaining my composure. When Saturday arrived, I watched Emily leave the house with her suitcases. She didn't say much, and I didn't feel the need to prolong the goodbye. I simply wished her good luck, and she walked out the door without looking back. As her car turned the corner, I felt an enormous weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in years, the house was silent. It wasn't a heavy silence, but a comforting, almost liberating one. I was amazed at how quickly I adapted to my new routine without Emily. I rediscovered things I had set aside because of the marriage. I started cooking for myself again, something I had always enjoyed but had abandoned. I eagerly returned to hobbies that brought me joy, like playing my beloved guitar and reading the many books that had been gathering dust on my shelves. The solitude I once feared became an ally, freeing me to be my best self. There were no more fights, demands, or frustrations. Just me, my space, and my peace. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Emily had moved back in with her parents and eventually found a job to support herself. I heard she had some regrets, that she missed the stability we had, but I'm sure that's just her talking. But she never reached out to me, and I never felt the need to learn more than that. Our time together had come to an end, and I was free from any resentment. This experience taught me that solitude isn't the opposite of happiness. In fact, it's a chance to rebuild your life and find joy in the simple pleasures. Today, I live in peace and contentment. I have my home, my freedom, and above all, my dignity. My marriage to Emily was a valuable lesson, painful, yes, but necessary. I can say with certainty that letting go of what no longer serves you is sometimes the greatest act of self-love.